right. Hello everybody. Welcome to Trait Space, your safe place. I am glad to be back. I was not feeling well last time, but you know how things go, and I'm grateful to be back on and see you guys again. This evening we have a special guest. As you guys know, it is National Caregivers Month, and this special guest, she has a very special story with being able to come and share her testimony with sickle cell trait, as well as being able to be an kind of a empowerment for other women and people that for caregivers. And yeah, I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about her story. So, Dr. Austin, I'll let you share a little bit more, and we'll go
Yeah,
from there.
thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really excited as well. So I'll just dive right into Elsa's bio. She is a dedicated sickle cell advocate, marketing consultant, and mother of two who discovered her own trait status during a pregnancy with her second child, a son diagnosed with sickle cell SC shortly after birth in August of 2015. That experience ignited her commitment to advocacy and educating others on the importance of knowing their genotype, especially prior to family planning. With nearly 2 decades of expertise in retail and digital marketing, community and public relations, and corporate event management, Elsa is a compassionate leader and speaker who collaborates with community-based organizations such as us, patient advocacy groups, healthcare professionals, and legislators to promote awareness, advocacy, education, and innovative support programs for sickle cell disease. I'm going to pause right there to let someone in and go right back. Okay. As the founder of Hope and Affliction, Elsa strives to build a global community of informed caregivers and warriors, creating a platform to share experiences, resources, and support those afflicted by sickle cell disease. Through Hope and Affliction, she brings hope and empowerment to families on this challenging journey. Elsa serves on the board of the Massachusetts Sickle Cell Association through the Pain Inc. and is an ambassador for Sick Cells. She is also a member of the advisory council for the Rise Women's Leadership Conference. Living just outside Boston, she enjoys cooking, reading, home decor, and traveling with family and friends in her spare time. What spare time? What spare time, Elsa? What spare time? But anyway, with that, thank you so much for being here. And I'll continue to let folks in. This is definitely, as Genesis said, a safe place, yeah, trait space. So you're welcome to speak. And all of our audience, please, feel free to ask questions and come off mute. This is your safe space. Without further ado, Elsa.
Well, thank you guys for having me. Such an honor. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you both on my own platform, and I like doing the questions. So this feels it feels at home, but all right, I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. Always my least favorite things to do is writing a resume and a bio. And every time I hear it, I cringe a little bit, but I'm excited to be here. I can't wait to talk about this because I love that as one, it's probably the only, if not one of very few organizations that fully focuses on sickle cell trait, and it's something that's so close to my heart. So I love it here. I can't wait for us to dive in. Thank you both for having me. And Genesis, I'm glad you're feeling better. I'm sorry to hear you weren't well.
No, thank you, Elsa. I'm glad to see you. We haven't caught up in a little bit, so I appreciate the condolences, and I'm glad to be feeling better for sure.
Yay. So where do we start? Well, I'll let you guys. This is your. I have
Well,
control.
we kind of let you kind of dive where you want to.
Okay.
We can kind of start with where I guess where you started with your pregnancy and kind of finding out you know how that was for you and with the sickle cell trait and kind of that journey for you at
Sure.
that point.
Yeah, I always like to say I was blissfully ignorant of my trait status until 2014. I met well, I was blissfully ignorant, met someone who was equally blissfully ignorant. We fell in love and got pregnant. And then during the first trimester of my pregnancy, during all of the genetic testings, is when I found out that I was a trait carrier. Um, at that point, it was advised that he also get tested, but I know that I tend to be a warrior, and I went down the Google rabbit hole of all that it meant. I knew that there was a 25% chance of having a child with sickle cell. What is sickle cell? Prior to hearing that news, the only place that I had ever heard of sickle cell before was that T-Boz. And like, I'm totally telling on my age. So when I was late in my teens, found out that T-Boss from TLC, that she had sickle cell, but did not know. And back then, she didn't share the trials that she went through. So in passing, I knew about sickle cell. And then as I did more research, so I'm an avid researcher, so I could spend hours going down rabbit holes of especially medical things, and learning all that I had heard and seen. We decided that, you know what, at this point, if it's in the cards for him to have sickle cell, he's going to have sickle cell. His genetic makeup is already there. There's nothing we can do. And I'd rather just focus on having a healthy pregnancy, and we'll deal with what comes when it comes. I'm a woman of faith. So of course I had been in prayer, just pleading, Lord, please, please, please don't let it be so. But that was not in my cards. So a week after he was born, we found out, went to the pediatrician's visit to Massachusetts, is obvious everywhere in the United States, they have to do the newborn screening. Our first pediatrician's visit a week after he was born, he came in with his little clipboard. So my daughter's pediatrician, my kids are 16 years apart. So they didn't tell me that then. And my daughter's pediatrician is actually used to be my pediatrician and all of my siblings' pediatrician, but he was up there in age. And I knew just even those last few years with my daughter, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want Dr. Shinoy to be this baby's doctor. So luckily, during the rotation while we were in the hospital, a few doctors came in, and there was this one doctor that just we had established, we had a good, it just felt right. Like, I don't know what it was about him. It was almost like I was interviewing all of them. And this day when I went to his office, I don't know if I liked him so much. Literally just came in with his little clipboard. Hi, great to see you guys again. So the newborn screening test results came back, and looks like your son has sickle cell disease. That's all I heard. And life almost like escaped me. And I just stood there like in shock. Just don't cry. Don't cry, Elsa. Don't cry. Just kept repeating, don't cry. Don't cry. By the 10th time that I said, don't you dare cry in this space, as if talking to myself in third person was going to change the initial. But right there, I lost it because all I heard was death sentence. So from there, it was the now really learning. So what does this actually mean? But the good thing was that this specific doctor actually was doing research for sickle cell, an Asian man. And one of the things that he said to me that I will never, ever forget is that you do know, I mean, I know this is really bad news right now, but it's not as bad as you think, in that there's been so much progress made. But let me tell you something. The only reason that sickle cell still exists is because it's a Black disease. So that made me go back and start digging. But in 2015, SEO, or search engine optimization, is not what it is, was not what it is now. So trying to find someone, and I don't know anybody with sickle cell, again, did not know that I carried the trait, barely knew what sickle cell was, not one person in my family did not know anyone, a live person that I could reach out to. So I took to Instagram to find people. Still, it wasn't enough. And there goes my little guy. You'll probably see him just pop around. So yeah, so then it became just a more of a rabbit hole of discovering what sickle cell is and how do I care for this child, and just being obsessively watching him. Like, when does it happen? What will happen? How will it happen? How will I know? Then every cry, is this a regular cry, or is this a sickle cell cry? Is he in pain? When will the pain happen? So it was a tough few years. It was a lot of denial at first too. And then it's like, all right, well, there's a shame. How could I have not known this? I passed this on to him. What will his life look like? But then shortly thereafter, we decided that we're going to let him lead a normal life. I don't think that we decided that we're going to tell people. We definitely weren't going to tell people. He's Jamaican, his dad is Jamaican, and they're very keep everything to yourself. So he definitely didn't share with his family. You know, I shared with my immediate family. But again, no one knew what it was. So it's the constant questions, and then the having to educate people. And he didn't have a crisis for close to one. So that was that. And so a lot of denial that first year, a lot of deep depressions, functional depression. I still had to go to work and do all these things. So at work, I was fine. And I would come home, it's just hopelessness, true hopelessness of what will happen, when will it happen? And then again, when you read online all of the horrible things that people with the condition go through, there were many months. I'd say probably close to 2 to 3 years of just utter hopelessness.
Wow. It sounds like you went through like kind of a roller coaster of finding out what happened, trying to figure out what to do, and then trying to adjust your emotions all through the process. And I can only imagine how your spouse was doing it as well when y'all were working through it. Um, so tell me how it is now. Like how is your son doing, and how have you guys adjusted over the years to kind of like your caregiving? How has it continued to adjust over the years?
Yeah, well, nothing or no one prepares you for that first crisis. So that was an eye opener. And then from there, he had a flu shot that triggered a crisis. And he was just starting to walk. He was fine the day we went to the doctors to get the flu shot. I think it was like at his just under, it was right before he was 1. So we went in for the regular checkup, and then they suggested, because he has sickle cell, you really should consider giving him a flu shot. Perky little baby that day. By the next day, he started not to feel well. He had a fever, so we took him to the hospital. From there, he was hospitalized for almost 7 days, unable to walk for 2 weeks. So from there, it was like, oh, okay, so this is what life. So then you quickly snap out of denial. You quickly realize that luckily I had a job that, so I did the whole work from home before the pandemic. My job was pretty flexible. I traveled a lot, but I also I had the ability to work from anywhere. So I was able to work from the hospital. But from then it made me realize that, wow, if this happens frequently, things can change very fast in terms of like how understanding will they be, knowing that I may have to miss work for 2 weeks or not ever come to the office. Though it was flexible, we still had to show up to the office at some point. But my boss was very understanding, and that was that. But then it's like, I think a few months later, so he has one of my cousins, we had kids exactly 3 months apart. He was born in August. My cousin's son was born in May. My mom, I- my grandmother was deteriorating. At this point, my grandfather had just passed and my grandmother was deteriorating. So my mom and her sisters, there's 5 sisters, they all took turns caring for my grandmother. So the two boys played a lot together because my mom, she was retired, so she would spend a lot of time caring for my grandmother. So one day I picked him up, and when I went to pick him up, he didn't want to leave. He cried and cried. Again, he was fine. Cried himself into a crisis, like wailing, crying. By the time we get home, he was so stressed. Then all of a sudden, he just got quiet. Within an hour, he couldn't move. Again, he couldn't walk again. So within that year, I realized that, oh man, but this time I went to the hospital and they did not know how to help him. So this is where I realized, because we had to go to the ER. It's not like we called the hematologist, they tell the ER team that we're coming in. They take him right in, but the nurse who was helping, so I'm explaining that he has sickle cell, and she's trying to pull on his legs. I'm like, no, his legs hurt. He can't walk. Don't do that. Oh, but I need to see if he can stretch or work. I said, no, 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 no. You can't do that. So now it's going into the whole educating the nursing staff as to what he needs and what medications he was on and all of that. So at that point, I realized that, okay, this is weird. You're the medical professional. Why am I here as a layman's just trying to explain to you what to do? So I realized the gap even in education, even within medical professionals. Um, so at that point, anything that I was feeling had to go out the window. And believe it or not, I'm actually very shy and reserved and a very private person. And I don't talk about feelings and things that we're going through, particularly in my personal life. But I realized that this disease is not something that you can keep hidden. But then I also realized that everyone that he would come in contact with would need to be educated on what to look for, that you can't stress him out. He's not a baby that you could just let cry things out, or you can't give him any shot just because you recommend it as a medical professional. So since then, life has been a whirlwind. He had a few more crises. So he was born in 25th. So 2016 was the first one, and then 2017. And then he had a couple other crises. We started him. He was in a little bubble for a while because my mom watched him at home. So he did okay. And then 2019, when he started school again, very first day of school, he caught a virus that attacked his right lung. Again, hospitalized for another 5 days. Again, it was the whole educating and people asking you if you need help. Can they help you fill out forms for welfare and this, that, and the other? And so it's been, caregiving took a complete turn when I realized the lack of knowledge within the space. Um, and then just even from a trait perspective, that it's never spoken about, that even kids, people who do know. So I met a few people on social media, and everyone that I talked to never knew that they carried the trait. I thought that was problematic, that every single person that I spoke to, and even till this day, that almost 99% of the people that I speak to, they did not know they carried the trait until their pregnancy or until that child was diagnosed with sickle cell. So my advocacy kind of, for me, it had to change. I realized that I was in a unique position where I did have cousins in the medical field. So I did have access to more information. I did have access to more resources. And I also, in my role at the company that I was with, the first 10 years of my career, I worked with pediatric cancer research. So I had worked with many hematologists. So I was able to call on people that I worked with in the past and educate myself even more. So I realized that there are other people that could use, there were other people that were feeling as hopeless as I was, but I found hope in some place and I wanted to give that back. So I wanted, it was by chance. I didn't even know I was advocating. I was just sharing information, sharing what I know, or telling, helping other people not to experience what my son had gone through. And then maybe it's just asking more questions than I did, knowing that, you can go somewhere and you have to be the doctor in that space and feel okay even in talking to a doctor and saying that, this is what my child needs and this is how much, when they should give it, and this, that, and the other. I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, so that's been the road to advocacy. It's just seeing a huge hole or a gap and wanted to kind of bridge that in some ways, just to help other people not feel the way that I had felt those days, and crying in that room and going into spaces where you leave your most precious thing to someone who doesn't even know how to care for them.
Yeah, I that did answer the question, and I think that is a good pivot to hope and affliction. Tell me a little bit more about how you started the page and kind of what it means to you, and the people that you are kind of speaking to, or the caregivers.
The page was actually started but kind of by accident. It was more so in 2020. So I mentioned that I took to Instagram to find people, and one of the first people that I found was this little boy named Titus. I want to say his page is Sickle Cell and Me. So his mom would share stuff. He was about the same age as my son. I think he was like a few months older. So he was born in 20. Oh, I have it here. Hold on. Because I was working on something the other day. So he was born in 2013. My son was born in 2015. But Titus had it rough. He had it really, really rough. So I would follow his page, and he was always in a hospital. My heart would always break. And I just like reach out to the mom every so often. And so flash forward to, so I did that in 2019 is when I officially started to wanting to find community. No, maybe 2018, wanting to find community. And but beyond just finding people for me, I wanted him to feel like he's a normal person, to know that other people go through this, but they can thrive. Like, and we promised ourselves that we're going to raise him as a regular child. They said he couldn't swim, we take him swimming. They said he couldn't travel. He's traveled more countries than most adults in his little 8 years of life. Then he just turned 9. We haven't traveled outside the country this year yet. If they said we couldn't, anything that they said he couldn't play sports, guess what he does? He plays sports. He plays soccer. He loves basketball. He's done track. Anything, any and everything that they told us that he should not do because he's a warrior, we said, forget you. You don't dictate our lives. You are not God. God is the only one that could tell us what not to do with this child. So we promised ourselves he was going to lead a normal life. But when the pandemic hit, it was actually a blessing for us. So remember in 2019, November 2019 is when he had I guess they would call it acute chest syndrome. I don't know that I would completely, but whatever. We're not here to discuss my battle with the doctors on what they want to call what. But that was November 2019, 2020, everything shut down. He had the best time. He did not get sick, not once. He had minor pains at home. And actually, up until August of this year, he just had his first hospitalization in August since 2019. So 2020 was good to us. But in 2020, I also started to, now I had more time because I traveled a lot and I worked a lot. I didn't actually have the opportunity to connect with people like I wanted to. So the pandemic was actually a time for me to, I could sit home, do my work, and then actually like connect with people. So I officially met Dima. And I'm like, oh my God, a 40-year-old warrior. See, buddy, not that I told him, but I'm telling like, oh my God, he could live a normal life, 40, because a lot of places are saying 12, 18 years old. I'm like, who are these people that are playing God and telling other people, you know, putting a death sentence on other people? So, and then I Clubhouse came about. And again, I'm a very private person. I don't like people sometimes. I used to say this all the time. Like, Lord, why would you put me in a position where now I have to be out there talking to people and have to hug people? Now I love people. But I used to be such an introvert, like being around people used to make me anxious. So Clubhouse came about and it was the only social media site. I hate Facebook with a passion, but I loved Instagram because Instagram. So by the time Facebook came, I was already out of college, so I didn't have a college email address to sign up. I'm like, I don't want to be in that place anyway. But IG, I loved because it was all about photos when it first came out, and I love pictures. Love, love, love taking pictures. So it was like, yay, I could do IG, but my page was always private. But then I was like, oh, you can't connect with people when you're private. I'm like, all right. So there was a struggle there. So in 2020, when Clubhouse came, then I really got to hear stories, but not just people in my little town in Massachusetts, but then I got to meet people from across the world. And it was an eye opener. And then through my work with the Massachusetts Sickle Cell Association, it used to be called the Greater Boston Sickle Cell Association. One of my cousins is a psychologist, and in doing research and just talking to our director, one of the things that I really thought we should focus on is to have a space that people can come in and talk about what they're going through. Everyone was suffering from mental health issues. Well, I wouldn't say issues, but everyone's mental health was at stake in 2020, if even not now. I think it was heightened then. It's not that it just began, but so my cousin did a I guess a webinar of some sort, you can say. And what was supposed to be an hour event turned to be almost 3 hours. And I realized then how much was needed for this space. So as I was driving home, I swear it's gonna make sense how Hope and Affliction came about. As I was driving home, something just said, you need to start a podcast and talk about all these issues that people are not talking about. You need to tell people that they need to get themselves checked because I truly believe that you can't have sickle cell without trait, and you can't have trait without sickle cell. Warriors are living longer, they're having children, and every single warrior will pass down the trait. So I'm like, well, even people with the trait that do know they have the trait don't even understand what that actually means, and that they can pass on this gene to their child or even create a child with sickle cell. So it's supposed to be a podcast. So little Titus, now that was December 2020, had this great idea. And then little Titus went for a bone marrow transplant also at the end of in December of 2020. Unfortunately, Titus didn't make it. He died January. Within a couple of maybe he had week after he had the transplant, he passed away. And that completely broke my heart. Like, broke my heart. I cried like a baby as if he was my own son, because he's the only other warrior that I'd known, and I'd never seen a child so young pass away from the disease. And I attended his virtual funeral. And at the funeral, the dad read, he eulogized the he did the eulogy, and he preached out of Romans 8, and Romans 8:28 has always been like my anchor scripture. But it was something that he said that I'm like, we need hope in affliction. And then it was just like, that's stuck. That's going to be the name of the podcast. But because I actually a super introvert again, I'm like, but I don't even like the sound of my voice. I have to do all the talking. So I sat on it. I got all the handles. I got the name and everything. But I was like, I don't know. So I said, you know what, and then a couple of years later, a friend was like, well, what are you going to do about that? I'm like, all right, I'll just start posting on Instagram. And because I already had the handles for the podcast and just to share about sickle cell. So yeah, so in 2020, what are we in 2024? So end of 2022, I just like, all right, I'll just start sharing. It was Sickle Cell Awareness Month, September. I just started to share, and it exponentially grew very fast. 21 countries, some 19,000 followers, and I'm like, all right. And then I just kind of like, that was more than I bargained for. Maybe I just need to like take a breather. So yeah, so that's how Hope and Affliction started, really just to provide that hope that I was missing when I started on this journey. And there is a podcast coming. It will be coming because now at this point I feel like downright disobedient because I'm like, this is not what it was supposed to be. It is what it is, but it's not what it was supposed to be. So I am going to be obedient. So there will be a podcast coming to talk about all of this, and I have both of you as guests on my on my show. So yeah, I'm going to try to launch by the end of the year, and then fully go all out in 2025. So that's Hope and Affliction.
I love that. I love that. Dr. Austin, do you have any questions or anybody?
Yes, and I was gonna say, Claudette, please feel free. Don't feel obligated, but certainly feel free if you'd like to come off mute and ask your own question while you're thinking. This, this is a caregiver topic month. This is National Caregivers Month. I just got finished attending I believe it was the fourth
Summit.
annual Caregiver Summit, which
Yeah.
in between life and everything, I heard a gentleman, and he was a military
Mr.
man.
Frederick.
Wasn't he wonderful?
Yes.
He was amazing. But he talked about his military, he talked about, being a father and all of that. And I, became curious then, and listening to you, I also am curious about how you define, or is there a difference for you between parenting and caregiving? And I'll tell you the origin of that question for me is, as you said, we entered the space, as One Foundation, started by a young man who lost his brother, identical twin brother, to sickle cell trait. And subsequently in 2020 as well, their mother, who also had sickle cell trait, passed away due to clotting issues.
Mm-hmm.
And without question, probably within the first 10 minutes of meeting their mother, that she is just the world's caregiver. There, she had 5 children of her own, but all of us were her children, Miss Wendy. But she only had children with sickle cell trait. So she's not accustomed to, dealing with clinicians and in and out of the hospital in that way. But I certainly would define her as a caregiver. And in fact, thank God, before she did leave this earth, she was recognized as a caregiver at one of the Warriors conventions. And I am so grateful that that happened. But others would just consider her to be a parent. But we have the terminology caregiver and parent. And, with all of the work that we do in sickle cell trait in particular, I have tried to appeal to funders to say, especially pharmaceutical funders, don't overlook the trait warrior, because often, most times, the trait warrior is also the caregiver. So that's the background to my question about parenting versus caregiving. So I definitely love to hear your perspective on that. And Claudette, please, if you have questions, feel free to jump in.
I actually never considered myself a caregiver. Um, so I mentioned that my aunts took care of both my grandparents. I consider them caregivers. I guess in my mind, I only considered myself a parent, just doing what any good parent would do. That if you love your child, you will move earth and heaven to make sure that they're well cared for. It wasn't until 2021 when we were planning, so I'm on the planning committee for the Caregiver Summit. It wasn't until then, actually, I'd say 2020, in the clubhouse room where someone said caretaker, and Elle was actually like, I prefer the term caregiver because and I, as a marketer, I totally got it because like taker, it's like you're taking things, but giving, you're pouring out of. So I was like, I like caregiving rather than caretaker. But no, I never considered myself a caregiver. But as I understand what that term means, I still don't consider myself a caregiver in a sense. Again, if you're a parent, you should do any and everything that you can to make sure that your child is cared for. But with being a caregiver, there are actually programs and different um, support. There's so many that I've learned over the last couple of years. And to your point, that you should be able to get funding for these different things because caregiving is so expensive. I was looking, so I have so many posts that I haven't even had a chance to post because it's just been a crazy month. But the stats are staggering. It's like 90%, the amount of money that's spent, it's like some millions of dollars that is spent on that caregivers, unpaid caregivers that would be considered parents, people that are just taking care. Why can I not find it now? Or maybe it was in October because I started to do this in October. But anywho, I'm not gonna bore you with stats, but it is important to differentiate because of the ability to get funding, to know that the amount of time that it does take for you to be in a hospital, that if you're able to get support from somewhere else, that would alleviate the big burden that especially if you're a single mom. I mean, it's hard enough with two-parent income, but if you're a single parent, now imagine every time you're not able to work. Lucky for me, I did have an understanding employer and I had a flexible schedule, but a lot of people don't. And I know so many moms now through the Hope and Affliction space. I've been able to talk to hundreds of people, whether in the DMs or people that now call that I consider friends, or even the community that we've built within Hope and Affliction, and just exchanging information. There are so many moms that are doing it on their own and they're not able to keep a job. And then when they go to look for support, it's like, well, what's sickle cell? Or what's this and what's that? And they don't understand. But there are state programs that caregivers can benefit from. There are so many. I mean, I'm gonna send you guys some of the detail, but I'm sure you guys know some of this stuff, especially doing all the work that you do with As One. So I personally did not consider myself a caregiver, but by definition, definitely. I mean, I'm his primary caretaker. I'm the one that he comes to for everything. Dad is great, but mom is a superhero. Respectfully.
Sure.
Even when he's in pain, he'll, not that he'll minimize, he'll tell me exactly how he's feeling when his dad is like, it just hurts. For me, he'll go into detail when it's dad, but dad is also telling him it's part of this Jamaican thing. No offense to any Jamaican, but it's like, man up. Man, it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
fine. Don't you let him man up? No, let him cry. He needs to cry it out. Yeah. So that's that. I really, caregivers don't get enough credit. Caregivers in the sickle cell space don't get enough credit, because caregivers for other things do get a lot of attention, a lot of resources. They have, whether it's autism or Alzheimer's, I've seen so many resources. I'm like, wait, what about the sickle cell moms? Not to say that these other things, or even cancer. It's like, and I don't mean to sound insensitive, but it's like, your cancer has a cure. You go through these things for a period and then you get better. We live through this. This is a lifetime thing. So yeah, so it's a little frustrating. So if I need to be classified as a caregiver to ensure that everyone else, those who can't and don't have, can get more, let's call it a caregiver and let's blow it at the, and we need to stop working in silos.
Yeah.
Like in this community, so many people work in silos, and that just, it's a disservice to us
Yeah.
all.
You're
But that,
hitting on so much.
It
You're
defeats the purpose.
yeah,
it does.
yeah.
It
You're
does.
you're hitting on so much, like that your point about all of the people that you know that are parents of warriors, you said 99%. It's truly 97%
Oh,
of all parents of sickle cell disease warriors that didn't know that they had the sickle cell trait. That is a statistic that I've heard quoted by MDs. 97% of
97.
all
Okay,
sickle cell disease births
it's
are
close.
born in the United States. And another MD actually said, I believe it's 100%. And statistically, that is 100%. And then, hitting on the working in silos, you know, I I am so grateful to be in this space, and I am eternally grateful to Genesis for, birthing this, or planting the seed so that this could come forth in this way, this support group. But you were talking about, parents that still need support and a safe place to talk. And what about the mommies, and the ironic thing, maybe this also, is that with the Social Security, there's only one cancer of all the cancers. There's only one cancer that is not covered under the Social Security payment umbrella.
Is it RMC?
It is RMC, the cancer that is only affecting people.
Coincidentally, that
It is the only cancer. So the sickle
I,
cell, it is just, and these are battles. RMC is the cancer that only affects people with sickle cell trait.
yeah.
So there's so much there is so much, that we need to, be shining the light on, and certainly not working in silos, doing it together as one. I take
Yeah.
every opportunity that I can to say that.
Love it. I love it.
Is important. And every third Tuesday, we're here until we're not here, to have this safe space for us, have this safe space for whatever comes of it. And we're gonna, I guess, put our heads together to determine what we'll talk about for 2025. Can you believe, Genesis, it's almost a full year?
You only
I
have one
cannot.
more.
I
Al-
cannot.
So you
But
guys have
Almost.
been doing this all year?
yes.
We had, what, Genesis stopped at my table, at the Aswan Foundation table, at the Warriors Convention in Houston.
Yes.
Last year.
last year.
Yes.
That was
So
awesome. It was so
we
nice
had a,
to see you
yeah,
guys both finally in person and hug you. And like, oh my
yes,
God, these people are real people.
yeah.
People.
And
I
we had our first trade space in January, and here we are 11 months later.
That's awesome.
One full year almost. Yeah.
Consistency in any way that I can help, please let me know. And I will definitely, I just wrote it down so I can put it in my calendar. If it doesn't go in my calendar, it doesn't
It
exist.
does, right.
I'll get it the second we get off this call.
That
I'm
was the
gonna put it
other
in my
thing.
calendar and join.
Thank you so much for that, because we absolutely need it. But that's the other thing I wanted to say to you. The statistics that you were talking about sharing with us, please feel free to put it here or share it, because
Email it. Yeah.
yeah, this is being recorded, and we put everything out on YouTube. So the eyes that will see it, we're hoping to be endless, but it's not just this live audience with us right now. So you're certainly welcome
Awesome.
to share.
Yeah, no, I definitely will. Because I was literally like deep diving. I'm like, this is crazy. And I know that like you can't break every category, everything, but it's like sickle cell, just why are we so neglected? Why is this community so neglected? And then to hear, and I think in 20, when George Floyd died, or could we say he died? When they
Was
unalived
killed.
him,
Yes.
they unalived him,
Right.
I became acutely aware that I was raising a young Black man in America. And that fueled things even more, because I'm like, listen, I love Jesus. I do. But I promise you, if someone was to adopt, I don't care who, if I bring my child to you and you neglect him and something happens to him, I might just have to throw hands and I go to jail and I'll just ask for forgiveness in jail. Lord, forgive me for saying this, but where I am now, and then just hearing story of people like Hertz, and then like as I mentioned, I met Demon 2020. She had sent me this podcast that she did with Hertz Nazir, and he talked about an episode that he has like in Connecticut. I don't know. You guys are in Texas. You don't know cold weather. But we used to get brutal winters here in New England, okay? Like 20 inches of snow at one time. So he went to a hospital in I don't remember exact month, but all I know, he said it was snowing. He was in a crisis. So you don't have time to prepare and go get dressed. The ambulance came and got him. He was just in shorts and a t-shirt. They refused to treat him and basically threw him out in the street in the snow with shorts and a t-shirt, basketball shorts and a t-shirt. He passed away shortly thereafter. That broke my heart to the core. The stories that I heard, and then to know that men were having it, that men were just looked at far worse. Pain is pain. Who are you to tell me what I'm feeling in pain? And then everyone has a different tolerance. My headache could be the worst, but now imagine someone. Then to hear, there was one guy who said he had been shot. He'd rather be shot every day than to go through a sickle cell crisis. I heard women who were talking about they were going in labor and thought it was just the onset of a crisis. Fully crowning, did not know. I was like, I needed an epidural the second I felt a little back pain. So the level of respect that I learned that I have hearing personal stories, I'm grateful for 2020. I am so grateful for the pandemic because it really gave me an opportunity to hear from real people. Because other than those stories, I would have, if it wasn't for social media, I would have never met any of you. It wasn't truly. If it wasn't for the pandemic and me having a time to like God saying, sit down, everybody. This is the reset, the great reset, right? Sit down and take a look at the world around you. And that I did. And it's like, I can never go back. I mean, none of us are ever going back to life pre-pandemic, but I know for myself, like the things that I've learned, I feel like God opened my eyes in order for me to be able to now I have to pay it forward. Like you cannot once you know something, you can't unknow it. So yeah. So any way that I can, anything that I can do to help in any way that I can share and help and we can collaborate, let's do it. Let's do it. Now I'm like, all right, this podcast we really need to, yeah. I feel like I said it. I'm like, why are you saying it? You're not doing it. But I think I needed to say it because now I'm going to be held accountable for
Yeah.
not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's needed. And I think I have an unconventional approach. I have an unconventional approach to things that
We'll get it done.
yeah. And I don't believe in sugarcoating certain things. And I think there's certain things and places and people that sometimes when you get money, when you get funding from certain people, it becomes a little bit harder to really
Yeah.
call out on their
Gotcha.
nonsense. That's the other thing. I'm like, I can't get funding from these people because well,
Mhm.
anywho, that we're just gonna go into a whole other thing if
Yeah.
I unleash that beast. So Claudette, do you want to join it? I feel like I don't want to. When I get comfortable, look, I'm an introvert, but when I get comfortable with people, I like we could talk.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story and coming. I'm so glad to have this space. And I finally put it on my calendar so it gives me an alert so I can show up.
That's great.
Yeah, I could talk a lot about being a caregiver. I have a brother who's he has a rare disease and it affects his um uh, mental capacity. And so, yeah, caretaking, caregiving, all of it. I understand, and also being a parent, doing that too. I think I learned along the way. Um, one was like the advocacy that you were talking about, and advocating for you and your whoever you're taking care of, and also I was just reading a thing about self-care. I think self-care is very important too. And making, it's really cliche. They say you can't give out what you don't have. You can't give out from an empty cup. But it's so true. And I think the post was discussing, self-care is not just going for a spa day, especially for caregivers, you know, uh, self-care is like sit down for 5 minutes. Not being able to go to a spa day, but maybe being able to sit in your car and listen to a song before you go in the house or something like that. And don't feel guilty about it. So yeah, those two things are things that I've had to learn along the way.
Agreed. Like self-care is just this glorified terms nowadays, but it's like just being able to sleep in an extra 10 minutes without or not worrying about medication or not worry. Yeah. Self-care is a lot more than just going to get pampered for sure as a caregiver, at least for me. Just because I went to the nail salon doesn't mean I took care of myself. But saying no and taking things off my plate, I like that's self-care. Taking care of my soul so I'm not feeling depleted, that's self-care. So I agree. Now, are you a trait carrier?
Oh
But
yes, I have the trait, and I'm symptomatic too.
Oh,
That's how I found this space. So I'm so surprised that y'all have only been doing this since January, because I think I found y'all in the spring. Because I was having issues in the spring, and I was like, I need to find someone to talk to about this. So yeah.
Just out of curiosity, how did you find us?
Social media, you know,
Okay.
like a social media search, just
Okay.
like Elsa was talking about, you know. I was like doing a social media search. I was like, uh I need to find someone I can talk to about this stuff, because I'm having issues again. And I found you all in the spring.
and they tell you, no, sickle cell trait,
It's benign.
we have, oh,
I've heard it so many times,
Mm.
but they still can't explain. They can't explain my pulmonary embolism I had several years ago. So,
Mhm.
and I'm
And
back on blood thinners. You know.
I would just say, you know, the good thing is research is happening and the needle is moving, but I want to bang my head against the wall. I entered this space as a ally. You know, I wasn't born with sickle cell or sickle cell trait, even though I just recently learned that I have the alpha thalassemia trait,
really?
beta thalassemia trait, beta thalassemia, whichever one is not sickle cell related. But and that just was a routine doctor's visit, and she was gonna be taking blood. I was like, you know what, would you run my blood? And so I do have this, I guess, anemia trait, but um, I come to this space as an ally, but I listen. And, you know, I'm listening to folks say, well, and of course, like I said, our origin story, Devon, you know, he's gone from here with trait. And then there's no cause of death code for deaths associated with trait. So we truly still don't know. But there was a study by way of 23andMe, which is having their troubles of their own, but they, you know, were able to find of their patient of their user population, over 19,000 people living with sickle cell trait that also have embolisms. So
Wow.
it's one of the very first of that large scale that is definitely pointing you know, causality with this symptom. And we just need more and more and more and more of that. But you know, I get heartbroken when I hear a medical doctor say it's not sickle cell trait. Okay, I've been in this space. March 1st will be 15 years that I've been working with the As One Foundation.
Wow.
We you can't keep telling these symptomatic trait warriors is not the trait and not tell them what it is. Oh, it's not the trait, it's something else. It's not the trait, it's something else. You can't do that. That is a disservice. I really call it,
Gaslighting.
yeah, I call it the disparity within the disparity. And yes, there are a lot of folks with living with trait are not symptomatic. They don't have any clue and they're fine. But the folks that are not fine is who I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And they all, you know, I've lived. We're in this age where obesity is now a medical condition. You know, the war on drugs is now a medical condition because of fentanyl. Mental health is now a medical condition. So why can't sickle cell trait, symptomatic sickle cell
For over 100 years. Well, they found out about sickle cell over 100 years ago, but yeah, that's the part that kills me.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
irks me. But
So
1 in 5 working Americans are caregivers. 49% spend 9+ hours each week providing unpaid care.
mm.
And I bet that number is much, much higher for sickle cell.
Oh, absolutely.
I tell you, I was reading the stats like, how is this possible?
Yeah. Maybe that's the angle. I mean, like I said, I thought trait was the angle to try to get funding, but definitely the considerations for the caregivers who are any sickle cell conference I go to, the majority of people there are caregivers, and the majority of them are also people living with trait. So maybe that's the angle to finally get some attention and funding. You know, you have to say it because money, money rules, but I'm also affirmed. I'm so grateful because Genesis and I don't have it. There's no budget for this support group. But
Yeah.
thankfully you found us, and I hope more and more people are able to find this safe place, and then those that listen on YouTube as well. We're hopefully we will continue to be found by who we need to be found by, and we get that SEO going and all that other stuff
Yeah.
that,
Yes.
Please do share your flyer for the next one, and I'd be happy to
Okay.
post it.
Okay.
Or do you guys just do,
We do a
yeah.
flyer. We do a
We do a
flyer.
flyer and then
Yeah.
we post in our socials.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Please do
it.
Please, you know what? Now just, even if, I think the more, because sometimes, the algorithm.
Yes, the algorithm.
That darn algorithm. Yeah.
But I hope
I
this,
share it.
yeah, but speaking of algorithm, Genesis post was just so, I mean, I love grandmas. I had the best grandma, and I know you had the best grandma too, but I had the best grandma. But I hope the algorithm got Genesis's post out about her grandmother caregiver. I mean, it just was so touching, but just so,
I did
on
see it.
point. Yeah, yeah. So, but we're over by 3 minutes. But I don't want to just abruptly, if there's any more thoughts or comments or anything, I will defer and I will say thank you for your presence on behalf of the As One Foundation. But I'll defer and give the last words to our guest.
Oh, me. I was like, I thought Claudette was going to talk.
Or whomever.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for even being interested in hearing my story. I appreciate what both of you are doing. Again, there's not enough conversation about sickle cell as a whole. Then there's definitely no conversations about sickle cell trait. So any way that I can spread awareness, help you guys out in any way, count me in. And you guys will be seeing an invite. I don't know when. If I do, I'd tell you. But life is slowing down a little bit. This year has been so crazy, but it is slowing down a bit. So definitely. Claudette, I'd love to connect with you too. And if you have any parting words, I feel like you're the guest here.
I'm honored. Thank you. No, I don't have any parting words. Thank you all so much.
Thanks for being here.
I
Thank you.
lied. I just wanted to just remind you, Claudette, especially, you don't have to wait until the third Tuesday. We do have a Facebook group. So you can join the Facebook group for the trait space and, introduce any questions or, discussions that can be going on in between our meeting as well.
Okay, yeah, I need to connect on there. And then also Elsa's information, links and information. I need to find those too. So okay, I will definitely check that out.
I'll put my IG in the chat and then maybe we can connect through there and take it from hope and affliction. I always have to double check. What's the Facebook group? I do still have the app. I just don't ever go on. But for groups, maybe I'll make.
I'm trying to grab the link right now. I should have been ready for that. 1 second. Motion.
There's a symptomatic sickle cell trait group.
That's Mape Miller out of England.
She was one of our speakers.
Yeah, she was.
Didn't
She's
get a chance
awesome.
to-
She's
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
she-
thinking about her as Claudette mentioned that she's symptomatic.
yeah.
Get a chance to, I actually went on the app to see if the recordings were up because I did want to catch her session, but I was in church when she was on.
I don't even see the group.
Oh no,
Okay, I just put the link to the group in the chat.
Perfect. Let me get it before we go on.
Did that work?
Space. Yep. So I will find it. Where did it go?
It is only on
You
Facebook.
still need it to be added as an admin.
Traits.
Oh,
space.
you do Genesis?
Yeah.
I thought you were. Please don't do that.
Oh.
Admin.
Okay.
Trait
Now-
space support group. Great.
Yes.
Okay, I'll find it on the app.
Oh,
Okay,
that link didn't work?
the link doesn't work for you?
Well, it's on I'm on my on
Your
my
other,
I'm on the what's the thing? Ooh,
your tablet or something?
on my laptop.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in. I did a search
This
for
one.
maybe because I'm already connected. I did a
Yeah, I
search
see
for
Genesis.
trait space,
Okay.
and I'm in.
All
Okay,
right.
Perfect.
okay,
I just sent a request. I see Genesis' face.
okay.
Beautiful face.
Well, I will give you guys your night back. I'm gonna spend some time and try to figure out how to get Genesis the administrative role. So class dismissed.
All right,
Genesis.
guys.
Thank you, ladies.
Thanks
Genesis, I hope
again.
All
you
right.
continue to feel better.
All right.
On
Yeah,
text.
please feel better.
Please, please,
Yes.
please.
All right.
See
See
ya,
you
Sarah.
guys
Happy
next month.
Thanksgiving and all that stuff,
Yes.
and see you
Yes.
next
Oh
month.
yes, yeah. Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, Dr. T. Thanks, Genesis. Thanks, Claudette.
Good night.
Good night.